Good afternoon, Local 304. I know it's been a week or so since I was able to give you an update. This local union's been pretty darn busy lately, so let's just kick her right in. Last week I was out at the Northwest Training Facility with Brother John Sanchez out of Ashland, and we were looking at the entire scope of what they do out there for training tree trimmers. And I think anybody gets an opportunity to talk to John, he was very, very excited about what he saw out there compared to what we're doing here. So obviously, a perfect world would be that we get to run our own training program right out of here. We got a lot of groundwork to lay. We got pretty far in the standards last week, and got another meeting coming up next week, and then again in March. So we're heading that direction. Very exciting to be able to get our tree trimmers recognized at a higher skill level than what the individual employers are able to do for them today. While we're talking about tree issues, there's a couple of things I'd like to remind all of our line clearance members about. One is that this local union hall needs to know whenever you serve paperwork out there in the field, demotions. I know there's a lot of that goes on where I get promoted up to foreman, and maybe I'm only there a week or so, and then I'm demoted back to my trimmer position. We need to know what's going on with that. And if you get paperwork that they're giving you that's identifying any issues, I'd really like to be able to see that paperwork. So help me be more proactive in those things. Don't call me 3 months later. Call me right away and tell me what's going on. So you can get a hold of David. You can get a hold of Chris or myself for any of those issues. Chris Hubel. Also, I'm hearing a little bit, and I don't know a lot about this, but temporary GFs. So it looks to me like, and it's a great opportunity in my opinion, if that's something you want to do to be able to take a look at it. We really encourage our strong union members to elevate to those positions up in management. Don't forget where you came from and keep that consistent application of the contract. But it becomes a constitutional issue whenever you are promoted up to that temporary position, how that affects your ability to vote, and especially with an upcoming election. So need to keep us informed again of those issues so that we can react properly to that. So those were the three big tree issues that I've seen the last couple weeks. West R, kind of the same thing. We need to know what's going on out in the workplace. With this merger, as we've talked for many of these business manager reports, is that the company still thinks we're one, and so they can have a mobile workforce when that's not completely true yet. We still can't bid across, and your seniority still doesn't go with you. We haven't been able to bridge that yet. And obviously, we all have separate contracts. So very, very important that if the company starts, for example, if you start to be overseen by a KCPL, legacy KCPL manager, I need to know that. Working through some issues on cross jurisdiction now, and I'd really like to stave all that off so that we can have a successful negotiations next year. But let's make sure I don't get blindsided with stuff when I'm arguing about one issue and maybe something else is going on. So keep us informed. Last week, I also had the opportunity through FLCIO and Secretary of Labor Delia Garcia to have kind of an intimate meeting with Dolores Huerta, who is a great labor historian, has some great labor history. She actually was working with Cesar Chavez on the farm workers organizing many years ago. And so a couple of things that she had pointed out that day were that how important it is that we get labor studies back in our schools, and then also the upcoming census, and making sure we participate in the census. Nobody really ever took the time to explain to me, and so I'm going to take the time to explain to you how important the accurate reporting of the census is. It actually is about $2,000 a head that goes towards infrastructure in your area, let alone your congressional seats that you get out of that census. So just think, that means 10 people not responding is $20,000 that your area is losing out on infrastructure, things that help take care of roads, bridges, gas lines, overhead lines, all the infrastructure that we live with every day. So please encourage everyone to please participate in the census. I know that in some communities that becomes a very negative thing because you feel like, number one, everybody knows I exist, right? So why do I need to be counted? Or the fear of the government knowing where I'm at. But in fact, those are very, very important census for our communities. Back to the labor studies for a minute. She intrigued me by referring back to what happened in Chicago at the McCormick factory back in the 1830s. There was a strike that the workers did on trying to get 8-hour workdays, 40-hour work week. They were traditionally working 60 hours, and they were tired of it and wanted to have that work-life balance. So they went on strike back in the 1800s whenever unions were first becoming strong. It led to some violence, and the police were involved, and so the aftermath was pretty horrific. And so the following day there was the Haymarket rally, and in the Haymarket rally they were trying to gain support for everyone, from everyone, to support those workers at the McCormick factory in the 8-hour workdays, and the riot that ensued from there wound up with 4 of our labor leaders were actually hung for their involvement in that, and another one committed suicide by hanging. So 5 of our forefathers died for our 8-hour workdays. So put that in perspective now when we are moving forward in contract negotiations, or are once in our contracts, and how easy it is for the company to try to take those things away that we really truly spilt blood for. So pretty intriguing. What I'd like to do, since I heard that and her plea to get labor studies back in the schools, there's some initiatives I'd like to see Local 304 do, and one of them is that as I give these business manager reports, I'm always going to try to give you a piece of labor history, maybe that helps us see how important it is that we fight for what we have to maintain what we have, and not just trade that stuff away. Wolf Creek, our Wolf Creek members are being offered another voluntary early retirement plan, and so they're doing 2 weeks for every year of service, up to a maximum of 52 weeks. So I don't know how many of our members are going to be interested in that, but Evergy's looking to shed some weight, evidently, so we'll see how that ends up. Our organizing topics, I'll tell you that we've been pretty progressive in our attendance of AFL-CIO organizing opportunities, and as a matter of fact, we've got about 7 or 8 of our members attending another organizing conference this week in Indiana. So I'm very excited about building our little army of organizers to get out there and help us in our organizing efforts. As you know, there are a lot of targets in Kansas outside of what our internal organizing is like. So we're very anxious to partner with the IO and get out there and organize the unorganized. So try to bring up the economics and social standing of all of the folks in Kansas. You probably saw that the average wage in Kansas actually dropped last year. And so we need to make sure that unions are busy doing what we do in order to attract more members and build the economy of Kansas. This month is the traditional month where we send out our dues receipts to all of our BA members. And so I sent out a steward comm last week related to this, but I want to make sure that we take just a minute to understand that ticket. So that ticket has got your shows your dues receipt for the year, so that you carry that ticket with you. If anybody ever asks you if you're a union member, that's the proof that you have to show you are. As a BA member, you get that ticket once a year. As an A member, of course, you get it every month, or or whenever you pay over the counter, you may pay for more than 1 month. But I want to point out a couple of things you might see on there. Number one, please check your address. Make sure that that's accurate. Make sure your classification is accurate. What you may see are 2 things on your ticket that may not be accurate. One, the wage may not be accurate because you may have gotten a wage increase the 1st of January that we still haven't worked through all the approvals of the contract to get it updated in our database. And then also, I just lost my train of thought now. What the second thing was that. So if your wage looks a little different than what you're receiving today, you can certainly call us, check your contract to make sure that it's accurate. I just remembered the second thing is that although they're all being sent out in January, it could say that it's a November dues receipt or a December dues receipt, depending on when we got your money from your employer. So sometimes in the beginning, as you start your membership, there may be a lag in there, and you may be running a couple months back depending on when we got your first payroll deduction. We have changed the way we do things now, so we hold it until we get the payroll so that it continues to be accurate, but in the past there were some of those that could be showing a 1 month or more lag. I told you last time we met that I would make sure I say something about the upcoming election this year. This is a big year for IBEW Local 304 since we will have both officer elections and the 2021 convention. So a couple things to keep in mind. February's local meeting next week will be the meeting that the president appoints the judge and the tellers that will be running the election this year. And that will start laying the groundwork for that. Those of you that are thinking about stepping up and running for an office need to remember a couple of things. One is your dues has to be current. Number two, you have to, when we fill out those bios in May, make sure your name is accurate the way you want it on the ballot. Take, for example, Brad Miller or Brad Gator Miller. Need to make sure that how people recognize you is how it's on the ballot. So we will talk more about that next time we talk, but just keep that incentive going on the election. Make sure that we're participating. Make sure that you're exercising your voice. That's the most important thing as a union member that you own. The last thing I'll give you today is that our political registrar has had the opportunity to come into the office a couple of days here and work on our voter registration. So he's going through the membership list and the voter registration. For those of you that for some reason are not registered, either you fell off the rolls or hadn't had the opportunity to get registered, we'll be sending out a cover letter along with a voter registration for you. Very, very important, as I just stated. In our local officer elections, it's just as important to be involved in our state and federal elections. 2020 is a big year, and so we need to make sure that we get our union voice heard out there to our candidates. So Local 304, again, I'll tell you thank you for everything that you do. Keep moving this great local union forward. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.